This conference is now being recorded.
Welcome to the New York State Association of School Business Officials webinar. Today's program is Building a Winning Team. Today's webinar is sponsored by Yankee Business Solutions, Inc. Your host for today is Donna Clement, Director of Professional Development. Operator assistance is available at any time during this conference by pressing #. A question and answer session will follow the presentation. You may send chat questions at any time during this presentation using the chat window indicated by speech bubble icon located to the right of the presentation. Please address chat questions to the Q&A group using the drop-down list located at the bottom of the chat window. Without further ado, I will now turn the call over to our host. Donna, please begin.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you all of you for attending. And I'm actually off-site today in Brockton with Tracy Smith-Dangler here at Erie 2 BOCES. And certainly thank Tracy for making this available so that we can all have this webinar. And thank you to Yankee Business Solutions and to Fred Seiler. He put together a very good program and talking about support services, supervision, and management. So let's continue with that. And Fred, it's all yours.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending today. One thing I'd like to try to mention up front here is with the webinar, you lose a little bit of that connection back and forth in dialogue. So I want to encourage individuals to use the chat capability to send in questions and comments as you go along, and I'll try to address some of those as we proceed there. And I've temporarily lost my first slide, but I'm assuming some of you have it there. What we're going to talk about today is leadership in support services. And we're focusing really on the business operations, food service, transportation, and plant operation and maintenance. So while we'll talk about some concepts that go across the entire school district, our focus today is those individuals, those people that work in those particular areas. And we're going to talk about leadership rather than managing people. Too often it's pretty easy to be involved in managing people rather than leading there. So that's going to be our focus today. And while we talked a lot about financial things last week, our focus today really is looking at the people side of the business, and that's the most valuable resource I think we have to work with. The agenda today, we're going to be looking at some of these areas. We're talking about departmental planning techniques with the focus really on what are some of the planning things that we can do. We're going to have some good ideas and discussion around team building and how critically important that is in your operations there. Talk a little bit about evaluations for improvement. How do we make sure that we just get better and better at what we're doing there? And how to work effectively with staff. It's our most valuable resource, and it's something we need to look at. How do we develop and use better and better? It's good to talk about buildings and maintaining them and about equipment, but our staff's just the most important thing that we have as a resource, and how do we work most effectively with them? And then another key part of that will be how do we provide that good quality supervision. So these are some of the topics we'll cover. It will not be in a structured agenda. We're going to really bounce around between some of these different areas. But during the webinar here, we're going to try to hit on many of those as we go through. How do you build a winning team? I think we work with boards of education. We typically report to a supervisor. We work a lot with teachers and with principals and other administrators. We have a lot of interaction with the community, but I think the most important thing in your operation is how do you build a team that you work with on a day-to-day basis, whether it's transportation, food service, whether you're dealing with your operation and maintenance staff or your business office. How do you build that winning team? Because things can get difficult. There can be some real challenges. But I think the key that makes your life go a lot easier, makes for a good operation, is building that winning team around you. Now, over my career, I've worked in the private sector, I've worked in the not-for-profit sector, I've worked in schools for about 20 years now, and I realize it's probably tougher to build that good quality team in a school district than just about any place else. We have unions where most of our employees, they have protections through CSEA. It's often difficult to make changes. So it's a really big challenge, especially in school districts, to kind of build that winning team. You often have some employees that you wish somehow they were on somebody else's team, and you're kind of stuck with them. So we're going to talk about what are some of the strategies to build that winning team. How do you provide that leadership in doing it? It takes time. It takes effort. If you come into a school district fairly new and you inherit a team, and it's not the type of team that you want to see to provide good business support services operations, it takes time to develop and work with and build that. So we're going to look at some of those things today as we look at how do we effectively provide leadership in support services there. Joel Barker has a well-known phrase: leadership is not about titles, it's about purpose. Doesn't matter whether you're a superintendent or an assistant superintendent for a business, a director, title only goes so far. People don't follow titles, people follow good leaders. And we want to talk today about what it means to be a good leader so that you're going to have individuals that want to follow you. I think you even find in your organizations, and people have different titles, it's not the title that makes the difference. It's the individual who's providing the leadership that people want to follow. You probably see that in the quality of some of your principals in your different schools, some of your directors. They may have the same title, but you can tell who's the outstanding leader that people are willing to follow. And I think a big challenge when we talk about individuals in school business is we often get in the role of being a manager rather than being a leader. And as a manager, you're just taking something that's in place and basically manage it and seeing that it continues on. But in your role as a leader, you really need to do some other things to really be truly effective. So we're going to talk a few minutes here about your role as a leader and what it means as far as planning. We'll spend quite a bit of time there. And then the oversight, we'll define what policy development means, and then staff development, what you can do as a leader to become effective there. Let's talk first about the area of planning. That's probably the most important area and the area that is so often overlooked here. Now, this could be, you could be looking at a large project. You could be looking at a major initiative. You could be talking about maybe the upcoming budget process that I'm sure you've all started. You could be looking at perhaps even a smaller task. But without good planning, we don't often have the success that we need and have the results that are important here. So I think the first step we need to begin with is understanding the situation. And we'll go into that in a little bit there, but it's the idea of collecting information, collecting some data, beginning to understand what is it that you're trying to address, what is the problem, the issue, the project that's going to require your efforts to provide some planning for it there. Then we'll walk through a little bit about establishing some goals. Now, what is it that we hope to accomplish? What is the endpoint that we're trying to reach here? Talk a little bit about creating an action plan. What are the steps we need to take? Or what's the action that's going to have to occur if we're going to meet those particular goals that's going to address that situation? And then what are some of the things that you need to do to mobilize your staff to support the plan? What are the items you're going to delegate? What are the steps you're going to define? What do you need to do to put this plan into place here? So let's look first at the situation. And there's lots of ways to approach this, especially this time of year. Some of the things that initially come to mind would be, what are some of the external issues that affect the area of support services? When we think about transportation this time of year, or we think about our facilities budgets, or what are some of the things that are really impacting upon what we're facing. I think we're all looking at less financial resources, looking at some significant budget cutbacks. So I'm sure most of you are beginning to face that challenge. How do you put together a budget where you have less dollars and the expectation that people want you to do more? And I know some things we're beginning to do as part of our education process is that the old idea that you do more with less probably doesn't work anymore. We need to begin to perhaps, in working with our community, our boards, and our cabinets and so forth, realize that we're probably going to have to do less with less there because there's only so far we can stretch some of those things. We're still faced with that challenge is how do you use those resources as efficiently as we can there? And I'm sure as we work with the community and so forth, and we look at that key resource, our people, how do we make the most efficient use of the people we have? And I know the questions we are beginning to struggle with is if we're going to look at some reductions or cutback in staff in different areas, how are we going to get the job done and get it done as efficiently as we can? So we're beginning to look at some of those situations and what can we do, realize we're going to have less there. Other external challenges that we face out there, there's our declining tax base in many situations in many parts of New York State here. The values of the properties for home and businesses have declined the last year or two. Those are beginning to impact on what we have as far as an assessed valuation tax base. We're all looking at significant reductions in state aid for next year. So some incredible pressures on there as to less resources perhaps over the next year or two. How do we manage our support services when we have less dollars to do that? And we're all going to face that challenge of let's not cut anything in the classroom. Let's somehow reduce transportation or district office or business operations. So those are some real external pressures beginning to we're being faced with there. Another key challenge, I think, is the employees that we have that are part of our team. We've inherited some of those employees, perhaps some we've hired over the years. And how do we deal with an employee that feels almost weighed down by the increasing demands that seem to be placed on them every day? And that's going to be a real challenge as we go forward with these external pressures there. Of course, part of this whole thing is obviously when you're reading the newspaper and you're hearing about what's happening in budget meetings, dealing with employee morale. You can imagine when there's so much talk about reductions of staff and a trimming of budgets, you leave many of your staff feeling perhaps their jobs are going to be impacted. They're going to either be one of those individuals that are part of a layoff, or perhaps they know someone's going to be laid off in their area and going to be an increased workload for them there to deal with. So some of the challenges that deal with employee morale. And depending on situations and unions, sometimes pay levels have been frozen, especially if some of the staff you're working with are not part of a bargaining unit and the Board of Education has decided, well, that's the one group they can freeze the pay for. Or sometimes benefits are being reduced or greater cost of health share. So you've got a lot of things impacting on employees there as to often little pay increase to no pay increase to reduction of benefits, and even things sometimes at home where perhaps the spouse has been laid off. So a lot of external situations and some real challenges that we need to look at to deal with there. And along with all of this is you need to maintain the reputation that you've probably spent years in developing in your departments there, so that you've wanted to build pride in your transportation departments, in your food service operations, you're in your business office, that you provide quality work and you do it in a timely manner. And the increasing challenge now to maintain that credibility that you've taken years to build up there. You can see a lot of situations you need to look at, and I think what you need to focus into is what is the particular project or item that you're going to focus into, and how do you really begin to address these situations as you look at it there. Next step then would be to looking at some goals there. And one of the challenges, certainly at this time of year, is the list of things that you need to get done. I think one thing most of us can probably agree upon is it seems like our life has gotten busier than ever, and the demands perhaps from superintendent, Board of Education, community for more and more information creates some real challenges. So while in one sense you need to evaluate your current situation, I think the next step is to look at what are the priority areas and perhaps have a good serious discussion with your superintendent, your board is, what are the most important things we need to focus into? We can't fix everything, or we can't do everything. There's so many hours in the day there. Same time, we can't do nothing because we're just so busy with all the day-to-day stuff that we need to take some time to identify the priority areas and determine what's the primary focuses that you're going to address there. Now, I know in probably most situations, budget's going to be a key issue the next few months here. A second thing I really want you to look at is the staff that you work with, which may clearly be impacted by the budget process, but how are you going to lead your staff over the next 6 months here through a very challenging process? How are they going to continue to provide excellent job performance there? And how are you going to meet some goals there that keep the district going forward there? Another part, obviously, in establishing some priorities and setting some goals is to determine some measurable goals that you can focus on. For example, in the budget process this year, we began to look at what we were going to do while we're trying to establish some budget targets. The other thing we're looking at doing is setting a goal of the number of opportunities that we want to create for interaction with staff, community groups at large, and even small community groups. So we've looked at almost tripling the number of opportunities to interact with different groups than we've done in the past there, recognizing that communication is going to be a key priority in our entire budget process. So we really sat down and looked at all the different budget opportunities we had last year and established some measurable goals of how many more we want to do this year so that we can improve on our communication. Another area that we've looked at is establishing goals in support services area, the area of controlling the cost of utilities. And we've actually are beginning to work with some of our schools in defining some targets to look at in next year's budget some way to reduce utility costs by 5%. We've got a lot of definition to do around that as to how we're going to do that. But setting some goals rather than just saying, well, we want to reduce utility costs without setting a target to work on there. The next step in this process then, beyond just establishing goals, is to begin to create an action plan. And in doing that, it's one thing to kind of establish a broad goal and try to create some measurement to it. This is where you need to begin to do some brainstorming. And this is where you really need to impact or interact with those experts that you work with there. I find it's incredible when you're working with your transportation staff or your food service, some of your business office staff. They have some of the greatest ideas on how you can improve your operation there. Of course, you need to begin with what's really working today and what are the things that are in place that are excellent, are making progress, and what are some of the new ideas to implement for this year. And you'll find some of your staff are very good at looking for some different ways to do things. I find that the person that's closest to the task that you're working on often has some of the best ideas on how to improve it. So you can ask your community how you can improve transportation, or you can actually talk to some of your drivers who are out there doing it every day, and they often have some good ideas on how to improve your operations there. So one thing we've done this year in the whole idea of trying to manage the budget, and especially support services area, is actually go out and do meetings with transportation staff, with facilities staff, within our business office staff, and get some of their ideas on how we can improve our operations and set some manageable targets there. Of course, then you need to develop some strategies. If you've got some particular goals you want to meet, what are some of the programs or activities that you're going to need to do to meet those? And this is where you need to begin to write some things down. You need to define some truly measurable steps here. There's a whole broad range of possibilities you can do this. We've been talking a little bit about budget process, but depending on a goal that you're working on, you need to kind of define some of the steps that can be taken into place. Keep it simple, and try to define what truly are some doable actions, and then you want to keep track of them there. If you don't write it down and create some targets that you can measure it rarely gets done there. And this is where working together sometimes with your staff as a team, it makes it truly a measurable process there. Of course, once you create an action plan and you build some partnership in there, you then need to mobilize the team to put it into place. So while you may begin by reviewing the situation and gathering information, and may establish some goals you want to shoot for, and begin to create an action plan that can put into place, you then need to look at how do you mobilize the team to move forward to do that. I know in White Plains, here, a fairly large district, as we look at the budget process, I'm working with 4 or 5 of my staff to work on different parts of the budget and putting the different pieces together. So you need to assign responsibilities, and one of the key steps really is looking to delegate it. It's amazing. I've found that my staff works much better than I do in so many areas. So if I'm looking at creating Word documents, my secretary really is outstanding in developing some of those items. I have an assistant treasurer that's just as outstanding in developing spreadsheets and working with PowerPoint presentations. So if I give her some ideas around that, she's really very good on that. My business manager is very good at developing some budget scenarios. So it's the idea of delegating some of these responsibilities and challenge them to do some of the work that perhaps you might have always done in the past, and creates that sense of a team and working together on particular projects there. Of course, when you have other people working on this, and even yourself there, it's important to develop a timeline. It's amazing how we run into real time crunches, and we're meeting deadlines that have creeped up on us so quickly, so that it's important to begin to develop a timeline with some key checkpoints, so that perhaps you as the leader of the team can regularly track the progress with what's going on. And I'm sure your district is just like mine. There are many things that seem to impact on when you're trying to address major projects or initiatives that kind of interfere with what's going on. You know, a member on your team that maybe was doing some of the spreadsheets out sick for a day or two. Somebody's moved up a date when they need particular information. So it's important to track progress and build a sense of working together there. Another part is the leader, I think, is being that cheerleader. Pretty easy that we feel like we're getting weighed down, lots of pressure, lots of deadlines to meet. You as the leader of the team need to be the one that's positive, need to be upbeat. You even sometimes need to be a little crazy, I think, and get the team motivated and excited about getting the job done there. Because it's tough getting through all the work that we need to do in the time it is. But if you can be a cheerleader motivating the team on, you can help them feel pretty positive about what they're doing there. And invariably, as I mentioned, sometimes along the way those problems will come up. You need to reshift some of the priorities, you need to change some timelines, you might need to shift a person from one task to another. You may need to call for help from someplace else so that you stay on task on meeting your particular challenge there. So the first part of this really is putting together the plan, and the next step then is providing the oversight. And the first thing I want to talk about is give staff room to perform. Don't micromanage. You know, we don't like it when boards of education begin to micromanage different parts of our job, and we don't like it when superintendents trying to micromanage parts of what we do. So in the same context, we need to be very careful that we're not micromanaging, so that if we're working with our transportation director and we've given them some key tasks and responsibilities in a particular area, that we then give them the opportunity to perform. to show what they can do and to be surprised somewhat of how good some of our staff is when we give them a chance to really show the best that they can do there. Now, it doesn't mean you totally forget about them. You need to monitor on somewhat of a regular basis. Depending on the type of project, the type of thing that they're working on, I find that with some of my staff, I try to meet weekly. I find with other staff that, for example, my food service director, we have a meeting formally once a month, but we keep in touch with either an occasional we stop in and see each other, or a telephone or an email, see what's going on, because I think we've been able to create a regular working relationship. So he can just provide a quick update through email on particular projects or items. And then on certain projects that have got some critical timelines and so forth, you probably need to stay on top of it on a daily basis as to where you are on those particular projects. And probably the biggest one we're working on now is with budgets. You're getting input from a lot of individuals across your district. You've perhaps given them timelines, and some of them are excellent at meeting those timelines. They've got that information in early. In our situation, we set December 23rd as the timeline, and about 25% of the budgets have now been submitted about a week early. And I know when I get down to the 23rd, there'll probably be 3 or 4 people I'll need to track down to find out, to make sure that it's in before they leave for Christmas, so that we can do some work during that break then. So need to monitor on a regular basis. And then I think an important part that's a challenge is to evaluate on an annual basis, the importance of an annual performance evaluation. One of the things we often deal with is we just have staff that have been with the district a long time. They've been poor performers, but year after year, they either don't get an annual evaluation, or they get an evaluation that says, oh, they're doing a very good job, and it all sounds nice and so forth. And then you get to the point that you say, I just can't continue any longer with this poor performer. And you begin to go through the process and realize you've got nothing to stand on there. There's been no documented record. So that's one reason why it's very important on a regular annual basis to do a performance evaluation that looks at how the individual has performed, and to define areas that they need to improve upon. And I think especially with some of your key people is establishing some goals, some areas that they can work on and improve that makes that person a better performer each year there, not just get comfortable to doing things as you've always done it. This next section I've called policy development, but it's really not policy in the sense of a board policy. This is more of what I almost define as your internal support service area type policy. It's, what do you need to do to make things happen within the area of support services, within the business office or transportation. Now, sometimes this could actually be regulations that you've defined. Sometimes it actually is policy that the board has done there. But I'm looking more at those internal guidelines that you establish as your mode of operation as the leader of the support services team there. So it's important to clarify some of those values and some of those beliefs that you have. For myself, I talk often about the importance of integrity, that our taxpayers out there are paying a significant amount of dollars, that we educate and provide a great experience for our students that live in our district, and they are really looking for us to provide quality job performance from our transportation, food service, facility staff, and so forth, so that we need to establish a high level of integrity, that we're providing a good day's worth of work, honesty, the importance of good work ethic. And it's important that you help establish those values and things that you're doing there. But beyond that, it's important to communicate expectations. I had a situation about 2 years ago, after being here about a year and a half, where I could see people had this idea that they needed to be at work at 8 o'clock, but if they punched in at 8:05, they still were recorded as being there on time. So I really need to sit down with my staff and said, the expectation really is that we're providing a full day worth of work. And that means if we're supposed to be here ready to work at 8 o'clock, that means we're at our desk ready to go then. And that had to help change that mindset that it was okay to show up at 5 minutes late or leave 5 minutes early, or to take breaks that were 20 or 25 minutes instead of 15 minutes. So it's important to communicate those expectations. Sometimes you need to state the rules, but I like to see that we do it in a positive sort of way. That my example I just shared there, that most of the staff here work from 8 to 4. They can, as a member of the union, take a 15-minute break in the morning and a 15-minute break in the afternoon. Some of my staff do that, some don't. And they have an hour for lunch, so they work a 7-hour workday. So providing the clear definition that your workday starts at 8 o'clock and your workday ends at 4 o'clock. You have 1 hour for lunch, not more than that. You have the opportunity to take breaks. So you establish what the rules are that have been set into place, typically by union agreements. And then, you communicate those expectations. And then in a positive way, you help support that there. When you do this, this really improves what I would define as the risk management and reduces the liability in your people management of your organization there. You're not getting sloppy in how you manage and with your people there. It's amazing that some good performers, when you provide good definitions and they understand it, work very well in that type of setting there. The last part in this particular section is what I call staff development. And we often send teachers out for professional development, but we don't often look within our existing staff to develop them. And there's a couple parts to this, not only development in their area of expertise, so that your transportation director or assistant director are going to opportunities to improve their skills in being a good transportation director. Same thing with your food service director or your plant operation and maintenance directors there. So they're participating in regional type workshops. They're getting a chance to get some good leadership training. When opportunity presents itself to go to some of the state type of workshops there. Also look for opportunities for some of your business office staff, maybe a district clerk or treasurer or payroll people to participate in the summer business management workshop. Not only a chance to update their skills and areas they work on, but to create networking opportunities in that area. Too often in the past, support staff's been the one that's been neglected in that area. And I know recently I've tried to provide those opportunities for my staff to attend some of those workshops and to gain some of those skills. But you'll find within your staff, even some of your clerical staff, some of your transportation staff, there are individuals that are potentially future leaders there. And you look for opportunities to develop them. This takes time, no doubt about it. But when you take the time up front, you work with them, you provide the commitment, you're eventually going to have individuals who are going to be able to do things, going to be performing things, going to eventually help perhaps save some of your workload, which keeps increasing, and building the overall strength of your entire team there. Often as you look at your staff, they may not have a title that says they're leader, but you'll see they've got some skills and experiences. And it's amazing when you begin to challenge them and you ask them, would you be willing to kind of work on this particular task or responsibility? More often than not, when you do it in a positive, motivational way, you'll find staffs willing to really be stretched somewhat, to learn some new things, to help to be a more valuable member of the team there. It's important then to create that culture that's responsive to staff's readiness and willingness to participate. Too often, staff just continue to do what they've always done day after day, week after week, and have not been challenged to look for better ways to do things, to learn new technology, to try to find ways to improve their operations there. Often you're going to look at the opportunity to identify some of your future leaders there. And I want to share what I picked up at a workshop a year or two ago. It's called the match technique there. Kind of walk through with here. M means to meet with the staff member. So you're going to identify an individual that you want to develop in a special way for perhaps some future leadership responsibility. A stands for align the most relevant task to that goal. So you're going to look for some particular task or extra job responsibility that's going to stretch them a bit there. Of course, part of that, you're going to provide some additional training to maximize that experience there. You want to regularly communicate with that individual so that they understand where they're at and how they're doing. And then it's important to honor their contribution in that particular situation. I had a situation several years ago when I knew I had a food service director who was looking to retire in the next year or two. And knowing how hard it is often to find good quality staff when you go out recruiting in the market there, we looked within our staff at one of our cafeteria managers we thought really had the potential to become a food service director. So we sat down with the individual and we shared, no promises, no guarantees, but we saw that they had some talent, some skills, and we wanted to look at the opportunity to see if we could develop that individual so that perhaps in a couple of years they could step into the role of being our director of food service operations. And the person was very interested in that challenge there. And what we then began to do is, besides their regular job as cafeteria manager, we created some opportunities in which they could learn some additional tasks. Sometimes you need to spend a little money to provide some additional time and dollars to support this, but it's part of kind of building some future leadership there. So with our cafeteria manager, we began to introduce some of those experiences that a food service director is involved in. So we got them involved in some of the interviewing processes. We got them working on some of the profit and loss statements that a food service director needs to work on. We had them understand what some of the payroll parts were, and some of the parts of doing purchasing bids. And in that process, our food service director provided some training and looked for ways to maximize that particular experience with that individual. And as we went through that process over a year or so, we tried to communicate regularly what they were doing well, how well they were learning, in an attempt to carefully develop a future leader that we hopefully could see step into that particular position. And throughout that process, trying to provide some real positive encouragement and support there so that the individual understood how well they were doing, where they needed to improve, and how well they were moving toward that potential goal of perhaps being director of our food service operation there. It's just a good example of how you want to develop future leaders. Better to develop one than to suddenly find that now someone's retiring or someone, for whatever reason, is going to discontinue their employment with you. Now you're trying to find someone perhaps brand new to fit into that particular situation. Staff involvement. I found in going into a couple different organizations throughout my career, when you first get there, you often find staff are very much set in how they do things in their job, in their task. And one of the challenges is helping your staff to see the value of what their role is within the organization, what their particular part is in the business office team or within the transportation department or in the food service operation, or what their role is in facilities. So they get a sense that they're not an individual per se, but they're part of a department, or they're part of a support services operation, or they're part of a school district, and that each one of them bring a particular value to the table as part of their experience. That's a key part of beginning to build a sense that they're not individuals, but part of a team there. And part of this then is to provide the opportunity to capitalize on the staff's skills there, their talents or expertise to fulfill some of the goals there. This can be pretty challenging sometimes, but it's kind of stretching the sense of where the team is going and what the value is there. Now, to give you an example here, this past summer we were really dealing with some challenging data management issues in our technology department as we were moving into a new student information system. And our technology staff was really stretched in trying to make this a transition there. And we were concerned about doing it successfully and the credibility of the department. So I reached out to my business office staff and said, I'm really looking for someone to kind of step out of their regular role and take on some new responsibilities in the area of data, checking, inputting, and so forth, and to take half of their day each day for the next 6 weeks, help support our technology team in implementing this. Of course, I also said to the rest of my business office staff, and we need some of you to fill in the gap that's going to occur when this person steps out. Of course, the initial concern from the union is, well, you can't ask that person to go into an area that's beyond their job description and so forth. But got the commitment from the individual and the team, saw the greater need of supporting the overall support services operations so that we all were looking good at supporting what's happening there. And actually had a very good experience then of having a person step out of their typical role of being an accounts payable clerk, spending half of their day working with our technology department and helping to deal with some of the cleanup around some of the data. That's tough to do unless you're building a sense of that your staff's part of a team, they're part of working together, they're part of supporting one another, and building that sense of team there. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about something that helps us understand the different staff that we work with. We probably have some individuals on our staff that are in their 60s and thinking of retiring soon. And we probably have some individuals that have recently graduated from high school or college, and they're someone in their early to mid-20s there. And you know as well as I do, they're very different type of individuals. So I'm going to spend a few minutes walking through how do you work with those different generations there. And I'm going to go through a little descriptions here. We've defined typically 4 generations. The traditionalists, or sometimes called the veterans, these are individuals typically born between 1900 and 1945. They either were born in the Depression or initially began to grow up during World War II there. And then the group that probably has got the most recognition is the baby boomer group, born between 1946 and 1964. It's probably the group that most business staff, business officials are part of there. And what's following them, and we're seeing more and more of these in the workplace, is what we refer to as our Generation Xers. These are the children of the baby boomers, born typically between 1965 and 1980. And then the most recent generation that's now coming into workplace, often called the millennials or Generation Y, individuals born in 1981, typically to 1999. Now, these are typical guidelines. Invariably, you're going to find someone that was born in 1943 that acts like a baby boomer, and someone that was born in 1951 that acts like a traditionalist. But just some guidelines to work with. Let me walk through these a little bit, and I think you'll probably, as you look at some of your staff, you'll see how they fit into some of these generational frameworks here. Your traditionalist. A key word there is these people are incredibly loyal. They're very dedicated, hardworking individuals that really stand as that stalwarts of your organization for some time there. Tend to be very patriotic. They either were born during World War II or their parents were very active in World War II, and they were a very young child at that time there. Their way to do things is top-down. Approach the most efficient way to get things done. I recall when I came into an organization once and was meeting with my business office staff, I met with this great accounts payable clerk, clearly a traditionalist, and I was trying to interact with her and how we can provide an effective operation, and she basically said, "You just need to tell us what to do and get out of our way and let us get things done there." So very much a military chain of command, They're very fiscally conservative and a real value for the dollars. You often see these individuals when it comes out to budget votes. These are your senior citizens that want to make sure that every penny is spent as carefully as you can there. And these individuals clearly look for leaders that lead, and troops need to follow. So these individuals, when you interact with them, often look for you to provide them clear direction. Now, this group also is a group that's retiring, so we're finding as years go on, there's fewer and fewer of these in our organization, but you do interact with them. They're your senior members of your staff. They're your senior citizens in your community, and you can get a sense that they're looking for very clear direction, very strong autocratic leadership from the top there. Along comes the baby boomers, and they begin to come into the workplace. The key word for them probably is an optimistic generation. They grew up in the 50s and 60s. They believed anything was possible there. Clearly impacted by television. As they were growing up, they tended to watch a lot of television, very much impacted on what they saw on TV. They believed anything was possible. Tended to be very idealistic, and were intent on fixing what was wrong there. These are individuals that often were involved in the civil rights movement or women's rights or equality issues. You'll find these are the individuals often talking about how you're recycling and some of the waste type things and so forth there. But if you have individuals in this group, they tend to be very competitive. And you'll see a little difference between them and some of the other generations there. Typically the me generation, while the traditionalists were thinking more of the overall organization and what was good for the country and the school district, this generation a little more focused on what's good for themselves there. And clearly baby boomers, especially as they got into the workplace and were in there now, they were looking for a change of command. They were looking for those traditionalists to retire and give a chance for their generation to begin to provide the leadership for the country, for our school districts, for our particular departments there. The next group that we now are seeing a significant number coming into our school districts now are the Generation Xers. These are individuals that typically were born from 1965 to 1980. They tend to be very skeptical. As they were growing up, every major institution seemed to be called into question, from the presidency to the military to organized religion to corporate America. So they are a very skeptic group sometimes there. Their impact on media, while the baby boomers were impacted by television, this group really grew up on cable TV and VCRs and video games and personal computers and cell phones. That seems to be the communication they were most comfortable with. This group tends to be extremely resourceful, but somewhat independent. It's a talent that we often need to work in leadership to really pull out there. When you give these individuals a challenging task, you'll find, and give them the freedom to do it, they will often surprise you at the quality of work that they do and how well they can do it. So they're different than the baby boomers and very different than the traditionalists, but a talented group of individuals that I think are making a difference in our school districts there. They tend to be very family-oriented. You'll find the baby boomers, they're the ones that often worked far too long, would stay too late. This group is ready to go home and do things with the family. And often when faced with the decisions between work and family, this group is going to say, family is first, family is more important, where your baby boomer will be the one to stay the extra hour to get the particular project done. Not that they're not as committed to the job as, say, the baby boomers. It's just their focus is a bit different there and focused on family. Their key word is what I've defined as self-command. They're looking for us to give them clear responsibilities and tasks and then let them carry them forth and get the job done. So different than a baby boomer, different than a traditionalist there. And you need to keep that in mind when you're working with your Generation Xers there. This last group is an interesting group. I've hired a couple of them in the last couple of years there, the millennial generation. These are individuals that were born typically in 1981 and later. They tend to be very realistic. These individuals typically in their 20s right now, often referred to as the Echo Boom or Generation Y or the Baby Busters. A very different group. They've been impacted by the internet in a very different way. Text messaging. I have a son who's in this group, and I call him and he responds back, "Why haven't you looked at your text message?" They're very much into MySpace, Facebook, blogging, YouTube. They're very much using the internet, much more so than the other groups, and are clearly going to be the generation that helps move us more and more in that particular area. An interesting part we're seeing in this particular group, studies have found that the number one workplace issue for this group is personal safety. I think with things that have happened between 9/11 and other things, this is the group that's most concerned about safety in the workplace there. They tend to be very confident. They tend to be very pragmatic at times there, different than the generation before them there. And this is a group that's really begun to appreciate diversity there. They began to grow up in a different world. They're really used to working with and interacting with wide groups of people, and from when they've gone to college and in some of the high schools they've attended. So they very much appreciate that. But they're very different in how they work with leadership there. Their key word would be, don't command what to do, give me the opportunity to collaborate and be part of. So while the baby boomers, they want to provide the leadership and direction and head committees and so forth, Generation Xers often like to do it on their own, just give them the task to be done. The millennial generation says, I want to be an equal partner in the team. I want to be sharing in the experience. Don't just let me be someone at the bottom of the ladder there. Of course, with this now, as you work with these different generations, sometimes you have a clash point between generations, and sometimes you'll see clash points within your business office or your transportation staff. Let me just cover a couple of them with time here. Generation Xers value time with family more than work. Very different than baby boomers. They like to see flexibility. They're the type of individuals that want to be able to adjust schedules to meet family needs, so that whether it's child care concerns or getting to a child's soccer game or so forth, they're looking for that type of flexibility. For baby boomers, work was always very important, and to succeed at work. For Generation Xers, they don't live to work, but they work to live there. So they have a focus on their life more so outside of work than within work. That doesn't take away that they are excellent quality workers there. And they're really trying to find a balanced life. It's the baby boomers that are the workaholics that often work too hard. It's the Generation Xers that are trying to find that balance between doing a good quality job and having a good family life outside of work. So you'll see some of those clashes sometimes in your departments there, and look for ways to manage those challenges there. Millennials, interesting, and I've seen this happen in a couple situations. The most important benefit to them is not necessarily salary or employee benefits, is flexible hours. I've seen a couple of individuals change jobs just because the new job gave them a sense of more flexibility in their job. In fact, my son just recently had the opportunity to take a job in a technology field in which he could pretty much set his hours any time that he wanted. So if he wanted to work at 10 o'clock at night or at 3 o'clock in the morning, he could do that. And to him, that was worth more than getting increased salary or benefits, even though that happened to come along with it too. The flexibility of hours. Hard to do in a organization with unions and so forth, but some of the challenges, I think, as we work with this millennial generation. Fun in the workplace. A traditionalist would actually be shocked that one could even have fun in the workplace. In their mind, you came to work, And absolutely, there should not be any fun there. And baby boomers, they're coming around on that, but if you looked at the workplace in the 50s and the 60s and 70s, work was a place to work. But now when you talk to Generation Xers and Millennials, they want to look for ways that while you work hard, you have some fun while you're doing it there. So some real clashes in the generations there. So while you might be trying to do something that builds morale and have fun, the traditionalists and often the baby boomers want to get back to work and get the work going, while the millennials and the Generation Xers like to have the idea that workplace is a place that you can have fun at. So how do we become effective leaders now with some of these challenging different generations to work with here? Too often, we're still stuck in that old bosses mentality that we learned from old bosses from many years ago, where the boss is the boss there, and wonder why we can't effectively lead our staff there. And I think what I'm suggesting now, you need to look at some different leadership styles for today. You need to look for ways to close that generation gap. So when you're working with traditionalists or baby boomers or Gen X's, millennials, you need to change your leadership style a little bit depending on who you're interacting with. So with a traditionalist, you typically want to provide clearly defined tasks and responsibilities. They like a strong leader that says, here's what you need to do, and do it. With baby boomers, you want to build a sense of a team working together, some of the challenges there, but sometimes you're going to need to make sure this group doesn't overwork too hard there. Generation Xers, they love challenges, but they want you to let them go and let them do it there. So they don't want to be micromanaged. Give them a task, define it for them, check regularly as to what they're doing, but let them go, and you'll be surprised at some of the work that they can do. Millennials, that's that new group. That's a real challenge there. I was working on a task recently that was about 6 of us on it, including a millennial, and she very much wanted to be part of the team, part of the decision-making process, part of coming up with a solution, and part of implementation. So it's interesting. If you get a good young millennial person there, they want to be right in there, rolling their sleeves up, part of the answer to the challenging problem there. So let's just walk through 4 leadership styles. In some ways, you still need to use each one of these in different situations. And you'll see these happening in your school district, and you as a leader need to provide some of those. You know, that traditional, autocratic, dictatorial style, often made decisions alone, came out of World War II somewhat. And you take the risk individually, you're very autocratic, very controlling. That's a style that rarely ever works anymore. It's the style that you probably need to save for emergency situations. The building's on fire, the fire alarm has gone off, and you're going to make sure everybody gets out of that building ASAP there. But most times that dictatorial style is rarely going to be an effective leadership style with the individuals we work with now. The analytical style, very much part of the baby boomer generation, very much part of committees. I think you'll find most school districts the last 10, 15, 20 years we're very much into data collecting, data gathering. Let's get all the facts. Let's have committees. It's an important way to deal with some problems and issues. A lot of observing and analyzing before reaching decisions there. And I think in some situations, that's an important way to approach a particular task or challenge there. The third leadership style is one of opinion seeking, and I think you're going to begin to see, if you haven't seen it already, this is a style that's beginning to get a lot more involvement in school districts, asking the opinion from the team on which to base the decisions here. This is part of those Generation X's and millennials out there that want to be part of the process. 3, 5, 8, 10 years ago, the budget development was often more that analytical approach, working with perhaps budget review committees. Now I'm finding the last couple of years, it's more of a opinion-seeking approach where we're doing a lot more involvement of staff, community, neighborhood associations, PTAs, and so forth, where we're asking their opinion. So it's beginning to have a leadership style that really invites the input from many other individuals to be part of that process there. The last leadership style is the democratic style, and the millennials certainly are going to begin pushing for this here. Encourage team participation and involvement in the decision making. I'm beginning to see that in some of our school-based management teams and so forth. They don't want to just be advisory. They don't want to just provide ideas or input. They really want to be part of the process. I think we're going to need to find areas in our leadership that we really give the team the opportunity to get into the particular topic, the project, develop the ideas, come up with the solution, and together agree on what's going to be the action plan to put it into place. As a leader, though, you need to look for which style is going to be most effective in the situations you're dealing with. Some of the time constraints you have, who are the people you're working with, and how do you need to build a sense of commitment from individuals there. So 4 different leadership styles. You need to look for ways to use them effectively in managing your operations there. We also live in a different world than 10, 15, 20 years ago, where a leader in the past could be pretty autocratic. Now you need to very much lead by example. You're going to set the tone for your entire staff there. You need to be able, you can't say it, you need to be able to demonstrate it there. So I think what's important is you begin to strive for excellence and practice continuous improvement there. You need to keep raising that bar higher there for your team that you're working with there, so that we never get comfortable where we're at right now, but how do we get better and improve what we're doing all the time there? First, you got to set the example by doing what you say that you will do there. You know, when I talk about my staff being at work in their seat, ready to go at 8 o'clock, I can't wander in at 8:20 in the morning. I've got to set the example by being here at 7:30 at my desk, you know, so when staff come in, they've already seen that I've set the example of being on time and being productive from the beginning of their day there. So you can't just say it, and you can't say, well, I'm the boss, that's different. Really, I think with the staff that we're working with now, we need to set by example what we're doing. In an old traditional style, the boss could be the boss and do what they wanted. Now with the staff we're working with, we need to set the example there. Another challenge, I think, to be effective as a leader is you often need to put yourself in their shoes. You need to take the opportunity to find out what they're going through, what their situation's like there. Several books have been out recently on this concept of servant leadership. And how do you effectively become a leader in the 21st century here? A couple key points I think to walk through that helps you to be effective in this area, and I think this is going to make you a better leader. We're long gone from the days where we just told staff what to do and expected them to do it. Now, under a servant leadership philosophy, you need to learn to listen and to listen intently without interrupting. It's amazing, I think, when you give staff an opportunity to share some of their ideas, some of their thoughts, some of their ways to improve your operations without interrupting. They begin to realize they do have a chance to contribute and to be part of your team and part of your organization. Need to show interest in those topics that matter most to others. Takes time. You want to find what are some of the hot points for each of your staff. You know, which one of your staff is a Yankee fan? Which one of your staff likes to interest in particular music or arts and so forth there? What are some of their interests? What's important to them that shows to them that you care about them more than that they're just an employee that's getting work done for you? The third point here, seek suggestions and share ideas there. I'm convinced the older I get, the less I know and the more my staff knows on how to do things better there. And you need to give that opportunity, whether it's your transportation director, someone in your business office staff, to come up with ideas and suggestions that's going to make this a better support services operation there. And really let them know that they can share their ideas and you really are interested in what they are and how they can do it there. If you sense that someone's anxious, ask what's wrong and offer help there. When an employee of yours is going through some particular difficulty or struggle, they're not going to be effective at work there. Want to create that open door so you give a sense that you're an open individual, you care about them. If you can, you want to help because you're looking at how to help that individual to be a good, effective member of your team there. And then finally, make a sincere effort to show that you are unselfish, that you're not looking out for what's best for you, but you're trying to look at what's best for your department, your team, your organization there, and that you really care about your employees that are part of your team there. This all begins to build into this concept of building that winning team there. It takes time, it takes effort, but it's amazing as you begin to build that core group of individuals that are part of your team. It makes your job easier, and it makes you more effective and has a significant impact for your school district there. Foster collaboration by building partnerships there. So the idea of it's not just you, but you're building a shared vision. So as I begin to develop this new budget process, I've been working with a couple key members of my business office team as to how we can put together a new and better budget document and how we can communicate more effectively. So you're building this shared vision that it's not your vision, but it's something you're building together as a team. I should disappear from your vocabulary. Always say we. This is what we are working on together to improve our operation. Whether you're saying that together with your team or as you're talking to your board committees or your board of education, give the idea that this is what we as a team are working on together to improve our operation. Encourage staff to work together as partners who help each other. I shared the early example where we wanted to reach out and help our technology department. So I need to ask my business office staff, we need to free someone up to help a related department of technology, and then we need to help backfill to help this particular. 2 or 3 years ago, if I were to ask someone, can you help out in someone else's office, I'd get this look like, what's wrong with me? But over time, kind of building a sense of team, that we're in this together, we're working together, I'm finding individuals actually beginning to volunteer to say, look, what can I do to help out? I see someone is been out sick for a couple of days. What can I do maybe to help them when they come back there? Point 4 here is to involve staff in the decision-making and problem-solving. As I've said several times, it's amazing some of the good ideas, some of the suggestions that they can come up with that you may not have thought of that can help come up with a better way to solve the problem. It's amazing, though, when you involve them as part of the process, you're going to find it more effectively when you begin to implement the plan to do it when they've been part of it. And always remember that good leaders are only as good as those they lead. The weakest link drags down the entire team there. We've talked a lot about how important the people are that are part of your team there. So when you have that opportunity, when someone perhaps retires, moves on, you want to recruit and hire the best individuals you can out there. Couple things that I look at in interviewing. First of all, that you want to involve members of your team as part of the interview process there. And of course, you want to look at some strategies there. What I've done the last several years is focus not on skills, because most skills individuals can be trained on. I'm looking for particular attributes that make them a key member of our team here. So what we do in our interview process, we develop questions, depending on the type of position, that looks at 5 different areas. The first thing we're looking at, we want members of our team that have good communication skills, not only written but also verbal. How well they're going to provide written communication. How well can they clearly provide that type of support to your organization. Looking for members of the team that have flexibility, because we're looking for a team that can respond to a lot of different situations. Looking for situations in which they can have good understanding to challenging situations there. Individuals that are well organized, individuals who are part of a team. These are key, I think, in building a good quality team there. So we actually rate, when we go through the interview process, we actually rate each of the candidates in each of these areas, see how well they meet up on the attributes, and find that invariably we get outstanding candidates when we look for individuals that are strong in these particular areas there. Important to provide staff support. Often in the past, we didn't want to share information or power. It all was kept with the boss. You really strengthen others by beginning to share that with members of your team there. You begin to enlarge people's sphere of confidence. You really say to the individual, this is your task, this is your responsibility. I'm going to give this to you, and it's yours to succeed at it there. Always look at the opportunity to delegate tasks. It takes extra time to do it because you got to do some training. But anytime you train someone how to do something, that's a task now that they can do rather than you in the future. You want to make sure the delegated tasks are relevant, and look for ways to provide that professional development for employees. Send them to SBMW so they can learn more about some of the payroll things. And then build those connections there. I try to encourage my staff to get to know their counterparts in some of the neighboring districts so they can bounce ideas off them. They can share some things with them. And when you get a chance, make a hero of other people. I know my business manager, major effort in putting together our annual financial report. So when we tend to get that recognition, I make sure that this person gets the recognition for all the work that they do to succeed in that particular area. I want to keep setting that goal of excellence out there, really achieving the very best there. You want to look for opportunities to grow, to innovate, to improve, to challenge. You want to make your district better every year than it was the year before. Sometimes when you look at a new assignment, you need to look at it as a brand new opportunity to, even if it isn't, to look for ways to make it better. And you need to question the status quo. I'm not sure how many hundreds of times I keep hearing, we've always done it that way. We're not going to be excellent unless we find some new and better ways to do things there. Of course, this means sometimes you need to experiment. Sometimes you're going to make mistakes that hopefully you'll learn from. But you need to encourage your team and your staff to be possibility thinkers there, that we can do some great and exciting things there. And then you need to deal with that occasional individual that's just that doubter there that doesn't want to do anything new or different there, and try to deal with them. Important to clarify the task, make sure instructions are clear and concise, look to actively seek feedback there, and you need to encourage staff. Even if things are going wrong, you need to say, hang with it, let's find a way to make that better, let's try to resolve this problem here, and let's move forward and keep building those small little steps that build to reaching a good final product. Now, final point that we often lose track of is the offering encouragement. We want to really build the morale of our team, to challenge them, to really push them to higher tasks and accomplishments. You need to really look for ways to be a positive encourager, to thank people for the good job they're doing, to look for opportunities when you can publicly recognize their contributions there, or to look for ways to celebrate accomplishments together of what you've done there. Look for ways to schedule celebrations. We get real busy in everyday things there. We look for ways in our operation here at White Plains to have fun sometimes. Look for ways to celebrate birthdays. We tend to do a picnic or two every year during the summertime. Just last week, I hosted a holiday party at my home there and invited all my staff over. Just had a wonderful couple of hours together, and just great for building morale there. Every year we have a annual golf tournament that many of our staff involve in. We have a volleyball tournament that our staff participates. A lot of fun ways and fun things to build the staff morale there. So besides doing all those work things, it's important to make sure that you're having fun with the staff there. I've done all the talking for the last 75 minutes, so we're looking for perhaps some of your ideas, some of the things that's worked for you, maybe what some of your big challenges are. So I'm going to turn it back to Donna here and look for ways that we can hear some input from each of you.
Yes, if you have any questions, please send them. And Michelle, if you could remind everyone on how they can ask an audio question.
Thanks, Donna. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who would like to ask an audio question, please press the number 7 followed by the pound key on your telephone now, and you'll be placed in the queue in the order received. Again, 7 pounds to ask an audio question or continue to send chats.
Okay. Lots of good information, Fred, and I always find knowing the various generations in the workplace to be very interesting. The point that I was looking at when we were talking about the generations here, the Generation X, it says family-oriented. I also find they're very peer-oriented and seem to go along and want to be with their friends. And just thought I'd point that out, too.
And I know one thing that Don and I have talked about in the past, and something I think you need to think about in school districts, when you look at staff or professional development, whether it's the annual conference or some of the workshops, the different generations almost requires to have some different approaches to respond to their particular needs there. If we try to structure a workshop or conference just for the traditionalists, we're not going to really relate to and meet the needs of, say, a baby boomer or a Generation X or a millennial. So we often need to build variety into what we're doing things and target certain things depending on the particular generation.
And that's a good point, and we do try and do that with our annual conference and in the SBMW. And certainly, anytime you have any ideas on what you would like to see in any of those programs, we always are seeking advice. Here is a question that we have, and let's see. I need to find out who it's from. Let's see. It says, I've been in my position for 1 year, and my only staff member has worked for the district for 25 years. It's been very challenging trying to point out to her that we do not have to do things the same way that they have always been done. Part of the challenge is also that I am a Generation Xer and she's a baby boomer, so I know that she feels that I don't know as much as she does. Any comment on that?
That's a challenging one, and I think most of us at some point have faced, especially we were younger in our career, to come in and we've got that older, set in their way employee. I think a couple things. One is you want to keep opening up the dialogue and the discussion there. You want to try to, I think, impress upon them that if we keep doing things the way we've always done it, we're not getting anywhere. In fact, we're probably getting worse because other school districts, other organizations are coming up with improvements. So we just can't stay still and always do things the status quo. We've got to look for ways to do things better. I think the other point is, and this is a challenge, especially around the technology. You almost got to carefully coach them and help them see their way through changes. And often they'll go through it carefully and with some difficulty. But occasionally, not all the time, they'll look back a few weeks or few months later and say, well, you know what, that is a better way, and I've now learned how to do that. So I think sometimes you need to just gradually build it one step at a time. I know when I've worked with some traditionalists, it took a while for them to gradually see some of the things going a little better. At the same time, my mother, who's a traditionalist, no matter how I tell her how easy it would be to do word processing, she still likes to type her letters out on the typewriter, and I don't think I'll ever get her to change. But you keep trying to find those little steps to build on there.
That's interesting about typewriters. So many of us don't even have them around any longer.
Right.
I've also found with technology that there's always at least 3 ways to do one kind of a function, and some are more comfortable for others. So sometimes we don't need to do a change in that as long as the end result is the same. But certainly the communication, the respect, and trust, when that is built, I think people then tend to look at and will consider more change and can see the benefits of it. And I always think that that's a point, too. You want to focus on what's the benefit. What are people really going to get from this? Or is it just, I like it this way, you like it that way? You know, what are the results? And I think you need to look at each situation and determine, is this something that this person really does need to change, or is it just that I don't like the way they're doing it, I'd rather see them doing it my way.
Right.
Now, of course, I'm a boomer, and I'll it doesn't necessarily mean that we're all the same. So, Shelley, I hope some of that helps. And if anyone else has any ideas, be glad to talk to you about those. Anything else that comes to mind, Fred, as we look at all the topics that were covered here?
One thing I would like to kind of toss out and be interested to see if others can respond to it is, how do you run staff meetings?
What do you mean, how do you run staff meetings?
In other words, I think the old style was you came into a staff meeting and you gave everybody all the information and then you left. But
okay.
do you run staff meetings now that create the opportunity for involvement, problem solving, working together to deal particular issues there? So curious how others may run perhaps their business office. Do you even have staff meetings? Do you give an opportunity for the staff to hear perhaps some of the challenges and some other ideas, or is it still more of an autocratic approach where you just tell people what to do?
I know the staff meetings that I've been in and enjoyed the most was that each person got to go over what they've been working on and what's coming up for the next week or the next month, and how it possibly will affect other members on the team. And then it was only after everyone had gone through information that the leader actually then went down his list, and he found that almost everything he wanted to cover was already covered. Now, maybe once in a while he did have some other points that we weren't aware of, but I found those to be extremely helpful because I felt more connected. Now, Shelley has another question. Since there's only 2 of us, we do not have formal meetings. We just discuss issues as they arise. And as long as you provide those opportunities and take the time when an issue comes up, good for you.
Kind of related to that, if you're in a larger school district, you often have, say, a transportation director, a food service, or facilities. What I find when I meet with them, I let them share some of their issues and items first. Almost back to what Donna was sharing earlier, is typically many of the items that are on my agenda, they're going to answer by bringing forth what they see are their priorities and their challenges. So Shelley might do that with her one staff member and ask her to share what are some of her issues or concerns to get her feel like she's contributing and part of the process.
Okay, anyone else? One question that came up here was about evaluations. If yearly evaluations haven't been done in a while, how do you get them started?
I've yet to find what I would consider the best evaluation form, but you might check either with your human resource department or sometimes your bargaining unit has a defined evaluation form. But this good time to probably, here it's December, you might indicate to your staff that if you're not done in the past, that you'll be doing an evaluation before the end of the school year, and you want to look this as an opportunity to provide feedback on how well they're doing their job and what are some of the things that they can improve to get better on. And at least they've got some advance notice that this is what you're looking to do there. And this is also one of those areas that you can very much invite them to be part of the process. One thing I do with my directors is often ask them to identify as part of the evaluation process what do they feel has been their successes during the past year, and what are some of the things that they think they really need to work on to improve.
Okay. That's a good suggestion. Hey, well, thank you. Thank you, Fred, for sharing all of your good information. And for those of you who are taking the support services program, the full course, there is an activity for this, and you can find that in the conference room, which is on the New York State ASBO website. Down the left side, click on conference room, and then go to the support services section. Others of you who joined for the content of the webinars, we thank you. We thank you to Yankee Business Solutions for sponsoring these two programs. We appreciate that. And this is the last webinar of 2009. So thank you all for being part of it, and look forward to you participate in our program starting in 2010. And our spring schedule should be out by tomorrow, or if not by Friday. And look for it on the New York State ASBO website, or it will be in the December issue of the Reporter. Happy holidays to everyone, and thank you for joining us for all the professional development that you have participated in 2009, and look forward to your participation in 2010. Thank you.
This concludes today's New York State ASBO webinar. Thank you to the sponsor of today's program, Yankee Business Solutions. Thank you all for attending, and have a great day.